My first guest is an actor, a writer, a director, and also a very fine artist. And over the course of the next 45, 50 minutes, I hope to reveal something about this prodigiously talented gentleman. He's blushing at the back there, so I'll spare his blushes now. He is, as you all know, the great Scottish actor, Peter Capaldi. How am I doing with the A? Have you been here before? This
no,
show?
I haven't. No.
It's an extraordinary place.
It's very nice.
The garden, famously, is where Charles Dickens wrote Tale of Two Cities.
The garden?
In the garden here. It's the only house in Soho with a garden. Oh. And this street here is called Manet Street, and as you know, Dr. Manet features largely in Tale of Two Cities. There we are. Any questions? Thank you very much. It's been, it's been a lovely... Peter Capaldi,
that was painless. Thank you so much.
If you don't mind me taking a rather obvious route and starting at the beginning, I know you're born in Glasgow, 1958.
Yeah.
That's where it all gets hazy from there on, because I was trying to... I was trying to do... I always do my own research for these things, and someone was telling me you were born in Springburn, and someone was in Springlands. Can you clear this up?
Springburn.
Springburn.
It's an area in the north of Glasgow. It's where they used to build locomotives for the Empire.
Okay.
So there would be these fabulous, I can remember this as a kid, there would be these fabulous festivities, really, when a new locomotive would be removed from the construction area and taken down the main road to the docks, where there was an enormous crane, which is still there to this day, called the Finnieston crane, which would lift a locomotive up into the air and then put it onto a boat. So
sorry, just to clarify, this is part of Glasgow, or this is going?
This is not made up.
No. Already, I'm believing every word you have.
Industrial Disneyland sort of come and see
this is part of Glasgow, or this is outside?
It's in Glasgow. Yeah, it's north of Glasgow. Yeah.
Okay. And how often did these locomotives come off the?
I can't remember.
Line? But do you remember seeing them?
Then 3 would come all at one time. You'd wait for ages. No, I can't remember really. Okay. I think I've just absorbed. Actually, everything I've just said is information that I've absorbed from my studying of Springburn in later years.
Thank God for Google, eh?
Yes.
After we leave.
No, it's true. I know, in fact, there was a wonderful piece of art that George Wiley, the late George Wiley, who was a wonderful artist, did a few years ago. He built, in homage to Springburn and to the Finnieston crane and also to the Wicker Man, he built a wicker locomotive.
Brilliant.
Took it on that journey and strung it up on the crane. Yeah. But they wouldn't let them.
I remember George Wiley doing a thing with paper boats as well. Do you remember
that? He built an enormous paper boat.
Yeah,
yes. He had a great catchphrase, which I think is very suspicious. His catchphrase was, "Be suspicious."
It works for me, man, works for me. Capaldi, of course, is an old Scottish name, isn't it?
Old Scottish name, Mick Capaldi.
The research that I did suggests that your father that came over or was from an Italian family, which
yeah, my grandfather was Italian. He married a Scottish woman. I think he was one of 7 brothers, and they came from Caserta in Italy, which is near. Well, Monte Cassino is the most prominent place there that anyone would know. They come from a little village called Piccinisco. He and 7 brothers left Italy in search of, I think they were economic migrants, we'd call them.
Was this the sort of diaspora, mid-19th century or something?
No, it's 20th century.
20th century.
I have to say it's all veiled somewhat in mystery, and I think that in those days, you know, I think you could disappear for 3 years and say, I've been to America. And no one would be able to check up. You know, I don't know whether he actually, he always, the story was that he'd gone to America and that he'd helped build the Brooklyn Bridge and he'd been part of all that, but then something had happened and he'd had to come back to Newcastle. Because there were Capaldis in Newcastle, and that's sort of where he settled, and that's where...
Sounds like it might be time off for good behaviour. But
yeah, but I think he did good because there were other members, the Americans, because they're very big on all that, finding your roots stuff, tracked us down.
Yeah.
And there were indeed, you know, 6 other brothers who had families out in the States.
And what did your mum and dad do?
They made ice cream.
So no, of course they did.
It was either that or a fish and chip shop or hairdressing.
But that is a long and noble tradition, isn't it? The Italian Scots.
I don't know how long and noble it was. I think that was the kind of that was how they peddled it.
Yeah.
I remember they used to say there was a secret recipe to the ice cream that they would make and sell. But I remember discovering plastic bags of powder that were clearly from Slough, from an address in Slough, in the back of the freezer. So I don't know whether they just ordered all this stuff from down south and made it up.
Your father and your uncle were both talented artists, weren't they?
My father was very gifted, and my uncle, who I'm named after, was extremely gifted. He painted all the time, drew all the time. I think my father was slightly in his shadow, so was always frightened. But when he did have a go, I was always amazed at how realistic the things were.
But amateur artists, like weekend artists, artists for fun, but with a real skill and the facility to draw or to paint.
Yeah, they could really draw and paint, but they didn't know anything about it. They weren't interested in art. They were just. I mean, my father would go on holiday and return with some ghastly picture that he'd bought, you know, for 20 pesetas or something like that at the seaside, and he would be full of the idea that it was an original, you know, and not realizing that whoever painted it was sitting churning these things out, piles and piles and piles of them.
An original,
But to him, to have an original piece of art was something very special.
And did they encourage you? Because
from the start, they were always they kind of always made sure that there were drawing materials in the house. They let me do it. They wanted me to do it. They looked at if I drew pictures, they talked about them. And I think there was a whole. I don't know whether it's an Italian. My grandmother, who was married to my Italian grandfather, but my Italian grandfather died before I ever met him. And he had married a Scotswoman, but she had gone to Italy and they'd gone back and spent some time there. But she was convinced that it was an Italian thing, that to be able to draw was a kind of genetically inherited thing from, because she knew all the great artists were Italian. And also of fairly low stock, which is what we were.
Long may it be so. I've got a few quotes from you, and these are not to embarrass you, and they won't. They're quotes that I think are incredibly either clairvoyant or, if not clairvoyant, then I think they're very, very wise. A lot of the things that I've seen you say over the years. As you can see, most of them say one message, really, a mighty big if. And this first one, it's taken me years to realise when I say back in Scotland, our English friends visualise us in a Hogwartsy Highland landscape, knocking about a vaguely industrialised version of Greyfriars Bobby, exchanging knowing folksy banter with the Proclaimers. I once worked with an actress who was both a star of an American soap opera and a member of a European royal family, Catherine Oxenberg.
I can't possibly say.
Who, upon hearing that I came from Scotland, asked me how many sheep I had. Could I ask that same question, just because I'm a member of the European
How many sheep
royal...
I have?
Yeah.
Oh, now I have
now.
a flock. Yes, I have an enormous flock, but someone looks after them for me, yes.
Our truth is more nicotine-coloured, featuring high-rise blocks, decaying steel towns. That's an unfortunate
I didn't say it. When I said it with the proper spelling.
See me after school, Andy Gallop. Decaying steel towns, alcohol and pasty-faced youths in then sports gear. I mean, it does sound like a very accurate description of my take on Scotland back then. It's don't look at me like that.
Recently.
That was very recently.
I mean, I think it was really because I found it. When I think back now to coming to London and becoming an actor and all this sort of stuff, I think we were very other. I think people. I always remember people would talk about Scotland in that sort of quaint way. I think they didn't really know that it was just as ugly in parts as parts of the north of England or parts of the south of England, that you could have, you know, factories in it, and that you could have normal people and you could have unpleasant people. They seem to characterize it in a kind of sort of mythical sort of way. So I always felt a sort of disappointment to them, you know, that if I told them the truth about where I came, you know, where I lived and where I'd come from, that it wouldn't live up to their expectations.
Well, a phenomenon that I've noticed very recently is when I mention your name, which of course I do at every opportunity because it generally results in a free drink and says, you know, expat Scots invariably get misty-eyed and say they spent most of their youth at Capaldi's ice cream house, your parents' cafe or ice cream parlour.
I think they get mixed up. I think they really conjure up something that satisfies. They think they have.
Yeah.
They think that. I mean, there's people always say to me, "Oh, don't you have that wonderful cafe
what was it called?
in Nardini's?" And I say, "No, my name's Capaldi. If my family had a cafe, it'd be called Capaldi's, not Nardini's." With its 50 different selections, flavours of ice cream, which we can get. We used to go down there at the weekend and all that stuff. So, no, so I think they think, and I've had people come up to me and say, "It's lovely to meet you, Peter Nardini, and how's it all going?" And
it's a masterstroke changing your name.
Yes.
Yeah. You've said that you demonstrated certain artistic enthusiasm, if not any necessarily great discernible skill as an earlier. But did you think that's something I'd like to do, working in the arts or as an artist, or?
I don't know.
As a kid?
I think as a kid, well, I can tell you I can remember vividly that one of the first things I ever made when I had a chance to make anything was I took a shoebox and I took a biro, and inside the shoebox I created the Ready, Steady, Go studio. And then I got another piece of cardboard, a Kellogg's cornflakes packet, and I drew little Beatles and Cathy McGowan, and I drew little cameras. So I made this little studio without ever really putting together that I was making a television studio. And I was so excited by what I saw on TV, and I could do this. I could make these things. So I just got on with it.
Yeah.
But I think that I think I was quite skillful.
Yeah.
And I think they sort of thought, well, this is what he's going to do.
Yeah.
But, you know, we live in a different age now. In those days, they hadn't had anybody who'd gone to university or art school or drama school or anything like that. Yeah. So it was a new thing to them. And their sort of, when I say they, I mean my parents, their sort of big ambition for me would be to sort of be an art teacher. I think they thought that was what I should be, yeah. And it was great that I could draw, but that was how it would play out, was that I would be an art teacher, which I really didn't want to be.
Yeah, because an art teacher was a career rather than an artist, which was
a
sort of
they didn't know anyone
who
was an artist, but they knew people who were art teachers, and you know, art teachers.
There's respectability and
they're great. Yeah. You know, art teachers are. You know, I'm sure a lot of people in this room and yourself, but me especially would not be here if we're not for art teachers, for guys who sort of thought outside the box and sort of encouraged you, and they were into all kinds of things. And I'm talking about at school, not at college. I'm talking about at school, and you were taught by these guys, and they were full of all this stuff that was out there, and they brought it to you.
I mean, this is true of so many guests and so many friends that I speak to. We all have at least one of these incredibly luminous figures in our early education who switches on a light for us, which burns for the rest of our lives. And not because they're flashy or fancy, but because they are able to infuse you with something and identify a skill or a talent in you, or even an enthusiasm in you that is not particularly skilled at that point. And then they say, if you like that, look at that, and what about that, and what about that? Yeah. And that nonsense that is sometimes said, if you can't do it, teach you. It's so pernicious.
It's rubbish.
It's absolute rubbish. I mean, everyone I've spoken to here has been able to name 40, 50 years later the person who switched on that light in the first place. And it's always a teacher. Yeah. It's always an English teacher, art teacher, maths teacher, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So early on, you've made your shoebox, but you've also developed a slight interest in theatre as well, or in performing?
Yes, I think, I mean, which obviously was all there in the shoebox, really. And also, you know, you have, when I look back at it now, obviously the 60s was a period of immense kind of change, but we didn't know that. It was just all going on around us. Yeah. And, you know, but I mean, I can't hear, you know, she loves you, yeah, without sort of my tears welling in my eyes, because I was sort of 5-year-old at the time. Yeah. And I remember that we all ran around in the street singing that song, not realizing that what was happening was that working class people were being empowered and being allowed to be seen as creative, which I was blessed to be a part of all of that. So I wanted to be part of this thing, but didn't sort of know what it was or what my role in it would be. Art was obviously a way in, but that led, you know, to drama and to theatre. I was just interested, and interested in movies,
the whole world out there,
and interested in how it all worked. But I think I started to think, well, I'd really quite like to be an actor, because it seemed to me enormous fun. But it was also part of, I guess I wanted to be a pop star. So I wanted to be anything. I wanted to be anything and everything, you know.
My adolescence in the 1970s was a kind of motorway pile-up, and like any trauma, comes back to me only in flashes. Terrifying purple shirts and homemade flared trousers, vivid spurts of acute embarrassment as I hear my youthful self, cocky, ignorant, scared and courageous, attempt to navigate the course between uber geek to punky art student and beyond, falling into every trap along the way. I've asked an older colleague who knew me at the time what I was like, and he said simply, you were an accident waiting to happen. I mean, I think this is, I don't want to embarrass it, I think this is a beautiful piece of description of what I'm sure we've all been through at exactly that same time in our lives, where we're aspirational. We know there's something out there, and our journey between where we are and where it is clumsy, is gauche, is full of pitfalls. And we look back and we think, oh God, was I really such a prat? But without doing that, you would never have stepped outside that Glaswegian box of safety and being the art teacher rather than the artist that you are.
Yeah, but it was a sort of, I mean, what I've missed out there is the fact that I became sort of obsessed with this idea of being an actor. And I don't know why, because my parents, we didn't go to the theatre, you know, apart from pantomime and stuff. We didn't go and see Chekhov, we didn't go to see Shakespeare. I went to the Citizens Theatre and saw people covered in blood and mascara and screaming at each other. I thought, oh, that looks great, I really want to be part of that. But I was frightened by them. They were quite sort of scary, and a lot of them were English, which was very frightening. But I left school when I was 17, and I was desperate to get into the theatre, and the only job I could get was with Scottish Opera. Scottish Opera was expanding at the time, and they just bought the Theatre Royal in Glasgow, and the only job, I was just desperate to be part of it, the only job I could get was, I was a wardrobe assistant, which was basically a dresser who had to pack up all these huge operatic costumes and carry them up and down.
Not quite what you were after.
It wasn't quite what I was after, and also I had to sort of, you know, hide from a lot of amorous members of the chorus who wanted some bleak nights in Aberdeen, sort of brightened up by this youthful chap. But what I was going to say was, I applied to drama school. That was all. I left school, and then I figured out where all the drama schools were. I applied, and it took great courage on my behalf to come down to London. I didn't get in.
Did you only apply in London?
Yeah.
They were the schools you wanted.
Yeah, so they said, forget it. It's over. This is not for you.
It was dangerous, wasn't it? I mean, not dangerous, but to be a Glaswegian male. To be a Glaswegian is dangerous. And
you've got to live in Glasgow.
And to say what I want to do is something, something artistic, something you know, to be an actor. You know.
Well, it isn't. Everybody's up for it, but nobody knows how to help you. I mean, I always felt really sorry for my dad, because, you know, if I'd said, you know, I'd like to work in the pub, he'd have had in fact, he did. He had a word with someone down the pub, and they got me a job in another pub and blah, blah, blah. Or if I'd wanted to work in the ice cream, he'd do that. But if you say, you know, I want to be an actor, what's he going to do? He doesn't know anybody who can help you.
So you didn't get in. What happened?
I came back to Glasgow and I just didn't know what to do. And somebody said, well, you should go to art school because you've got all these drawings, you can do all this. I said, but the date's passed. No, I can't get to art school. Yeah. And they said, phone your teacher. So I phoned my old teacher up, Pat Boyle was his name, and he said, I'll phone the art school. I said, I don't have the qualifications. Okay, you know, because I didn't get much in the way of qualifications. He spoke to the art school and they looked at my stuff and they said, yeah, come here. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Of course it was, yeah. I mean, this is when art schools were art schools and not pretending to be universities and not undermining your entry requirements, but in those days you really could get into art school with a half-decent portfolio and a good line in bullshit. Because you didn't need the A-levels, you didn't need to show that you towed the line. No. You just needed to show that you had some sort of...
I could do this. It would be crazy not to invite me in. At 17 years old, it would be cruel and wrong to say this child can't do this.
And you went to the Glasgow School of Art, that beautiful Charles Rennie Mackintosh building that we've all visited as tourists, but very few of us have actually sat in the library as students, as you obviously have done. And just checking some of the alumni today, I mean, obviously, artists that we think of as the Glasgow School, both ancient and modern, Stephen Campbell, Stephen Conroy, Jim Lambie, Douglas Gordon, Jenny Saville, Adrian Wisniewski, 3 recent Turner Prize winners, Simon Starling, Richard Wright, and Martin Boyce. And then other alumni, Liz Lockhead and John Byrne, poets and playwrights, Pam Hogg, the fashion designer, Alistair Gray, the novelist, Robbie Coltrane, etc., etc. I mean, a brilliant, brilliant educational establishment. Just looking at those names, you think you couldn't have an output of that sort of talent if it was not geared to doing anything except encouraging and nurturing talent.
Yeah. But there was a kind of, you know, you were aware of all that when you were there. But there was a kind of sense that it was, that all of those people became what they became in spite of how they were taught. And that sounds bad. I don't mean it to sound bad, but what I mean is that somebody had to impose a kind of discipline, which was a fairly classical discipline of life drawing and stuff like that, onto all of this stuff to give it some sort of a shape. Otherwise, it would just be a happening, you know, which would go nowhere. So yeah, but I think also, I mean, John Byrne, I think, is one of the great unsung geniuses of British art.
Tilda Swinton's dad.
Well, her former partner. Her former partner.
Her former partner.
John Byrne, yeah.
Ah, not her dad.
No, not her dad.
Oh, I've got that horribly wrong.
No. But he is an astonishing draftsman and painter and playwright. And he was part of a group of creative people who began to... they created the concept of Scotland that we walked into, i.e. the colourful, bright use of working class language, an industrial sensibility, an artistic sensibility, a connection to American blues, rock and roll, music. This sort of hadn't all been brought together before. And you see it all, I mean, you see it with Billy Connolly and people like that. But John is the person who pulls it all together and also can draw it and paint it. And he's an astounding talent. Wow.
And you...
and nobody's ever heard of him, I bet.
Well, no. He's not a household name, but he's a name. You were bitten by the music bug.
Yeah.
It was that sort of time, wasn't it?
It was that kind of time, which I'm sure, you know, you were right there as well. But basically, we all arrived at art school listening to Neil Young, and with long hair and sheepskin coats, and with fleas in our hair.
Just give us a period where you were at art school.
1976 to 1982.
Okay. Yeah.
76 to 80. Yeah. So we turned up as kind of proto hippies, and then in the summer break, punk happened.
Yeah,
So we all came back with peroxide hair and leather trousers.
Now,
and desperate to play electric guitars and all that sort of
history, again, I mean, as with Springburn and Springdale or whatever they called it. Springburn, yeah. And Springdale, or whatever they called it.
I don't know where Springdale comes
it's
from.
okay. It's okay. My accent's not getting through to you, but I'm from a different part of the Highlands, obviously. History is slightly confused as to whether your first band, or maybe it was your only band at art school, was either called the Dream Boys or the Bastards from Hell. Maybe you could actually clear this up for us, and for rock history.
Well, they were the same band, but the first name we had, which was infinitely better, was the Bastards from Hell. But that was kind of because at the time everybody was in a punk band and they were trying to think of the worst, most offensive name they could think of. So we thought, we'll call ourselves the Bastards from Hell, or the Bastards from Hell, because that's the most horrible group of people we could imagine people seeing. But then we rather fully, but we were doing it with our tongues in cheek, which of course was our downfall in the end. Because it's very difficult to be humorous in any way in rock music, apart from yourself.
Thank you. You were the singer, presumably. And
I was the singer, yeah, and then we came up with this stupid, because never think of anything, it was the worst name for a band ever. But we thought, because we came from art school, and people would realize that we were steeped in, German expressionist movies and Dr. Caligari, and we thought it was a reference to kind of nightmares and all of this kind of stuff. But no, it subsequently just became a name of a sub-Chippendales boy group. But we had a great time. I mean, I loved it so much because it sort of brought together all the things I was interested in, which was like showing off, dressing up, acting, singing, creating a world, because you could make your own world with all these songs and stuff like that. But we were terrible. But we survived for quite a while, I'm sure, but we sort of lost, we got fed up. Everybody else got signed and got famous. And we didn't.
You had two illustrious collaborators, didn't you? Craig Ferguson, who now hosts the Late Late Show. How did that happen? He was what, the drummer?
He was the drummer. Well, Craig was, he's now I can't believe, I go to America and turn on and he's on TV at night after David Letterman, speaking in his kind of mid-American sort of Glaswegian accent. And he's great. Craig's a fabulous kind of force of nature, and he's hilarious. I mean, he's just one of the funniest people I've ever met. But to show you how far he's come, he came from a place in Scotland called Cumbernauld, which is famed for being the location for Gregory's Girl. It was a new town. It was built, I don't know, in 1978 or something like that. People were shoveled in there from tenements into these concrete boxes. And there's nothing. It's a sort of concrete dump, which they created. But he came from there, and he worked in the post office. And he would occasionally take a trip into Glasgow on a Friday night to come to, there was a really cool place called the Rock Garden, where we used to go.
We used to have one here.
Yes, and we used to play gigs there and stuff. We had a drummer who was, we always had, you know what it's like with drummers, it's like really difficult getting a drummer who'll stay the course and hang around. One night we did a gig, and I happened to announce on stage that we were looking for a drummer. And afterwards, this guy, this kid came and said, "I'm a drummer. Would you audition me?" We'd have just taken anybody who would have said they were a drummer. They had a kit.
And a band.
And that's right, yeah. But we said, yeah, okay. So he agreed, and he came, and he was great. But this is how far he's come. Because he was from Cumbernauld, and we were from Glasgow, he described us as a Glasgow band. And so we were at a much higher plane than any of the bands he had played with who were from Cumbernauld.
I can see
so we were the real thing. We were from the metropolis. And he came and joined the band. I always remember he would come and be part of the whole thing, and do all the parties and stuff like that, and get really drunk, and then have to go to the post office on a Saturday morning. And he always used to have in his pocket an emergency pound. It was so long ago. It was rolled up. It was rolled up emergency pound. So that if anything went wrong, you could get home. But of course, as the drink and the lifestyle took its hold, the emergency pound was consumed.
God, Don't knock that emergency pound. I'm sure I had one somewhere. But and the other member of the Bastards from Hell Stroke Dream Boys was a friend of yours and mine, Temple Clark, who's now a great storyboard artist who does storyboards for fabulous movies. The most recent one that he was telling me about was when he was doing the storyboard for Coriolanus with Ralph Fiennes.
Yes.
He was trying to storyboard out the fight scenes.
Yes.
But he, in the absence of anyone else, Rafe said, "I'm going to have to fight you, and you're going to have to draw it while I'm fighting you." So they were in a dance studio surrounded by mirrors, and Ralph Fiennes would get Temple in an arm lock or a headlock or something, and say, "That's a good one, draw that." And Temple would be looking in the mirror as Ralph Fiennes had him in a headlock. "Hold it still," he's saying, "hold it still." And he would draw that out. Anyway.
Yes. Temple was very, very gifted. Also, he was the only one of us that looked like a rock star.
Yeah, he still does, actually.
He was very handsome.
And I can never forgive him.
And he always used to get the girls.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we hated him for that.
Temple Clark sounds like a superhero as well.
It does. It's an extraordinary name, but it's from Edinburgh. So that was very different. But they also, I must just point out, there was another guy at art school called Ian McCaig, who I remember Ian used to draw elves and spaceships and all this kind of sci-fi kind of stuff. And the tutors said to him, "You'll never get anywhere if you just sit around drawing spaceships all the time." And he became George Lucas's storyboard artist.
It sounds like there was just so much talent in that place at the time. Did any of you not get a job?
Well, I'm sure there are a few people who fell through the cracks, and you know, Muriel Gray, she was there as well.
Was she there? Okay. Yeah. Okay. You backed, or I say backed. You supported Altered Images, didn't you, with the great Claire Grogan?
Altered Images, yeah, that's right. We supported a lot of.
I could be happy.
Yeah. We did a tour with them.
Yeah, I know. We
did a tour, and we had. I must tell you, our guitarist came from the island of Lewis. Has anyone ever been to the island of Lewis?
As in Lewis no more.
No, you've been to, is that Don? Yeah, you've been to the island. Okay, it's a far-flung island on off the west coast of Scotland, and we got this tour. We were very excited to go and support Altered Images, but we said none of us can drive except for Roddy, who was our guitarist, who came from the island of Lewis. You've got a license, haven't you? Yeah. Okay. Well, you can drive. Yeah. Great. So off we went on tour, not realizing that Roddy had passed his test on the island of Lewis, where there is one set of traffic lights. He'd never seen a train. He'd never seen a motorway. We were like this. We were all nervous wrecks. By the time
here to tell the tale.
Yeah.
Gary Kemp was
Gary,
my guest last month, who confessed that True, that song that we all know, ha 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 ha,
yes,
is actually written about Claire Grogan.
Oh, really?
He had a pash on Claire Grogan,
right,
and thought that he would impress her by almost quoting Nabokov with this line about "put your seaside arms around me" or something in True.
Almost quoting Nabokov.
Yeah, because in Nabokov it's seaside limbs.
Oh.
Well, you didn't need me to tell you that.
I knew that, of course.
Yeah. But I'm going to come on to Gary later, because there's another curious connection between you and Gary, apart from the lovely Miss Grogan and Nabokov. You're at art school, you've got the band going, and you have a moment of really good luck, don't you? You're cast in what becomes a very much loved movie. How did that happen?
Well, this is Local Hero.
Local Hero.
I'd actually left art school by that time, but was in the kind of rock milieu, or whatever you want to call it, the new wave kind of thing that was sort of going on, and doing lots of gigs and just hanging around and eating curries and getting drunk and all this sort of stuff, but kind of getting nowhere, really, not getting signed up. Even, John Peel wouldn't give us a session. Everybody loves John Peel, except for those few of us who never got a session. Oh, really? Okay. You don't like to mention it because it makes you sound bitter. So I was hanging around, and, we'd go and see other bands, and there's someone would play at Tiffany's, or someone would play here. And I'd go, and I went to see Altered Images, and there was this guy hanging around, and it turned out to be Bill Forsyth, the film director. I didn't know that. I didn't know anything about that. But I was talking, hello, 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 blah, blah. And then I never saw him again. Until one night I came back to I was renting a room in the West End of Glasgow, and I came home rather worse for wear, having had quite a few drinks, and came into the kitchen, and he was in the kitchen with my landlady, who was a costume designer, and they had done a film for the BBC together, so that they were talking about that. And I just dribbled on, I think, for about an hour full of stuff, talking a lot of crap like I'm doing tonight, but I had dyed red hair and an earring, and I had leather trousers and all this stuff, so I guess I must have made some impression, because he said, a few days later, he got in touch and said, would you like to be in a film? Well, of course. But I had no idea it was a proper film. I thought, I'd already been because at art school, people were always doing odd little things, and I would sort of join in with all that. I said, sure, yeah. And he sent me the script. I couldn't understand it. It was huge. I had to wade through this thing. What the hell is this? I don't know what this is. And then there was this part, and I don't know what. I have to read all this, and I've got a gig to do. I've got a song to write. I've got. So I thought, oh, this. And then we heard that David Putnam was producing. I didn't know who David Putnam was, but they said, well, he's just done this film, Chariots of Fire. This sounds interesting. And then they said, so they'd like you to be in this film, and it's all going to be shot in Scotland, but they would like to screen test you. Gulp. Yeah. I had no idea what that meant, or what that entailed, or anything. They said, I don't even know who they were, because I didn't have an agent or anything like that. So I'm saying they, I don't know who they were. Who were they? I don't know. Was it my mother? Were they phoning my mother? When I phoned her on a Sunday to see how she was? Somebody, anyway, they said, it was the casting director somehow was getting in touch with me, said, you'll have to come to Shepperton Studios to do a screen test. And I thought, God, Shepperton, I knew that's where they filmed Hammer horror films, so I was very excited. So they said, you'll have to get on a plane. I've never been on a plane. So I went on this plane from Glasgow Airport, imagining myself to be hanging around with Rod Stewart and other such luminaries who were constantly flying up and down from Glasgow to London. To me, just realised we hadn't taken off. You know, I sort of, have we taken off? And then we came to Shepperton Studios, which I recognised as Transylvania, of course, because all the woodland around it is used all the time for the Hammer horror movies. And I did this nightmarish screen test with lovely Jenny Seagrove, who played the part in the end. I didn't know what to do. I just sort of learnt the lines and showed up and tried not to be.
Clearly you got it. You're being very modest here, because the story goes that Bill Forsyth was actually struck by the drama of your 23-year-old face. Is that possible?
I don't know.
Do you remember that as a description?
I didn't think I had a particularly dramatic face, but I think...
Can we just see that?
An overactive face.
What are you thinking about?
Girls. Naked girls.
Me too.
In a fish tank.
Yeah.
What's up?
I think we hit something. It got misty all of a sudden, and I think we hit something. Oh, shit, I hate hitting things.
It's just kind of stunned.
Maybe a broken leg or something. Should we put it out of its misery?
What do you mean?
Kill it. Hit it with something hard.
You've already done that with a 2-ton automobile. Just put it in the car.
Well, we can't drive in this stuff.
Where are we?
Last couple of road signs were in Gaelic. It's not one of my languages.
You speak languages?
French, Italian, Spanish, Greek, Turkish, Russian, Swedish, German, Japanese, Dutch and Polish. I have a facility with languages.
I've got some chocolate and some gum. What have you got?
Nothing. Niente. Nada.
Okay, okay. This is my car. Porsche 930, turbocharged. Good car's important. I used to get migraine headaches when I drove a Chevy. Car like this won't let you down. Conference time in Houston. I'll give him a call tomorrow.
Good night.
Yeah.
Do you think we could have the lights off?
Sure.
Hello?
Someplace, huh?
Yeah.
I think I'll call him Harry.
No, her name's Trudy.
I'm hungry.
I'll drive. Whole lot of scenery, though.
How do you feel looking at that now? I mean, you look very at home in a role as an actor in a car doing a scene with another actor, but that's your first movie?
Well, that's not how I felt. I mean, and of course, it's completely, it's not the way, you know, the way that the character's dressed. I mean, I had to take my earring out, you know, in order to do that. They had to wait until my hair dye had grown out, and I don't know, I just always feel as if I'm so lucky to have got any job at all.
But when you see that, do you only see what you would do differently now? Or do you cringe, or do you think actually...
Well, you see, you know, somebody who's 22 or 23,
yeah,
you know, just doing their best, but not having... I can see that that person has no training, there's no... it doesn't know how to do this.
Retrospectively, how do you feel about that fact that you are an untrained actor, that you've picked it up on the hoof, you've learned by doing rather than...
I think I'm very happy that's the way it's happened, because you learn your own way, you make a lot of mistakes. I was very frightened. When I look at it and I just think, this is a very frightened person. Because everyone else, it seemed to me, had a kind of toolbox. They'd either been to drama school, or Peter was a very skillful actor who'd been, you know, at the Actors Studio in New York and stuff like that. They sort of knew how to act. I didn't know how to act. So I kept thinking, what do you do? How does this work? How do you actually make this work?
Were you energized by that? Were you excited by it? Or did you think they're going to tumble me any minute, that I shouldn't actually be here? There's sort of terrible administrative error and they wanted to get someone else to do this?
I sort of thought it wasn't really going anywhere. I didn't sort of think it was... I thought it was a wonderful break to get, but I didn't sort of think this will lead on to a career. I sort of thought it would be a strange thing that happened to me, and then I'd go back. I mean, when it finished, I mean, I was paid, to me, an enormous amount of money. I don't think it was, but to me it was. And I just went home and took all my mates for curries and lager, and just spent it all in a matter of months, and just went back to trying to put bands and things together. But I'd sort of, sort of seeing it all going on, seeing them with the cameras and seeing how everybody seems so interesting. Everybody seems so fascinating. I mean, Chris Menges, who shot me, I was very struck there by the landscape. And Chris Menges is one of the top directors of photography.
Yeah.
He did The Mission. Yeah, he did The Mission, he did The Killing Fields, all this sort of stuff. It is all of Ken Loach's, did all of Ken Loach's films. And you know, you listen to these guys and their knowledge, their sensibility, their understanding of the world and of aesthetics is very exciting to be around. You also have Burt Lancaster. You know, why am I standing next to Burt Lancaster? Which was extraordinary.
How did you find that, by the way? Because by all accounts, he's a slightly
he was great.
Odd individual.
Well, I don't know, because again, what do I know? I'm just dropped from, you know, lifted from the curry houses of Glasgow to a film location and dropped in there with Burt Lancaster and in fact, the very first things we shot were with Burt Lancaster, because of his availability and stuff. And he was very funny, and he said to me, he said, kid, I gotta tell you, kid. He said, you got a fantastic instinct, kid. Fabulous instinct. I can't understand a fucking word you say, but your instinct is fabulous. And also, ironically, in light of my later career, he was the first person that I heard swearing with that aplomb that Americans seem to have, and that elegance and ease with it. I said to him, hello, Mr. Lancaster, how are you doing? How are you enjoying your stay? And how's your hotel? Hotel? He says, hotel is fabulous. He said, the woman who runs it is a cunt. But the hotel's fabulous. So he was amazing, and he would talk about...
I think he had a slight problem with women generally, Burt Lancaster. There's a story about him with Margot Kidder, which I won't go into now, but I'll tell you later, which is deeply unpleasant when they were working together, and she never worked again in Hollywood because she answered back. On the back of Local Hero, presumably you're thinking, well, by your own admission, you're not really thinking, I'm just waiting for the offers to come in, but did the offers to come in?
No.
I mean, they didn't.
No.
Why?
I don't know.
You didn't have an agent, for example, for a start.
I didn't have an agent. This is how different things were. I mean, you know, this is a world, you know, this is before like Train Spotting. So this is a world where, you know, Brideshead Visited, which is fabulous, and I love Brideshead Visited, but that's just about to come on. It's rather like the way things are now at the moment. There's a wonderful, you know, Rupert Everett and Hugh Grant are all about to make their debuts. You know, another country is playing around the corner. And when I did decide to pursue an acting career and did decide to come and try and get an agent, I was told by a very famous agent, the phone's not exactly ringing off the hook for young Scottish lads. So I was told to go away. So I couldn't get an agent. I was mad, because really what I should have done, which is what kids do now, is you just go to America and you sit around and you wait for something to happen. But I didn't know. I was ignorant and naive. I mean, it took me ages to realize that this was such an astonishingly great stroke of luck, that it was fate saying to me, look, come here, this is what you should do. Eventually I realized, yes, that is what I should do. So I came to London to try and do it, but it was not easy, because there weren't a lot of parts for Glaswegians like that.
You're what my lovely wife Kelly would call a doer. I really think
I am doer.
Yeah, no, you're not doer, you're a doer. Yeah, there are people who wait for the phone to ring, or there's people who try and do something to make the phone ring, or at least to keep themselves busy. One more quote, and I won't embarrass you with any more of these, but I thought this was especially telling about you in the light of your subsequent career and the breadth of work that you've done. You say, I tell my younger self, worrying that you are crap is a waste of time. Worrying that you can't do it is a waste of time. Worrying that you failed is a waste of time. No one cares. Just get on with it. I tell him to celebrate being different. It's the attitude that he brings with him that will define what he makes of himself. I tell him, don't avoid the gifted, the talented, the hard-working or privileged because they frighten you. That's a waste of time and the opportunity to learn something. Embrace everything. My mother said, if you fell in the Clyde, you'd come out with fish in your pockets. I'd like him to learn sooner that luck will not be enough. I think that is I mean, every student I teach should have that tattooed on his forehead so he can see it every morning. That you're not crap, that not everything is a competition, that it's not about don't do it because you might fail, do it because you might be brilliant at it. Yeah. And clearly, you know, that is something, you've got this motivation inside you, or an energy inside you that will not be beaten by the fact that the phone's not ringing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that makes it sound very brave and kind of courageous, but it wasn't really. It was really, I was, in a way, painted into a corner because things weren't happening. So I would have to do things myself. But I think, that quote is really more about, it took me a long time to learn that. I would say it took me until I was about 40 before I realized that one of the things, the big things that was holding me back was me. And was my attitude, was my kind of fear. And it was a fear engendered in, it's so much easier to slag people off, so much easier to be frightened of people than it is to say, they have something special, and that's theirs, and it's wonderful, and yes, I don't have it, but it's a valuable thing, and let me look at it and be around it. Don't be frightened by it. Don't walk away from it. Don't, because obviously, I work with a lot of people. I work with Daniel Day-Lewis. We did a play. We did Dracula, a version of Dracula at the Half Moon Theatre, in which obviously Daniel played Dracula. And I played the comic sidekick that was Jonathan Harker. And I remember Daniel, I loved Daniel, but I was frightened of him because everything about him was other to me. He was the son of the poet laureate. He had an apartment in Chelsea. He walked around with poetry books stuffed in his pocket. And women loved him. The dressing room would be packed with these gadflies all around. I loved him, men loved him, we all loved him. Yeah. He had enormous kind of charisma and elegance. And I think I would tend to run away from that instead of saying, Daniel, can you tell me how did you do that? How did you work out that was the thing to do? How did you figure out that that was the right entrance to make? How did you figure out this, and this? Yeah. And that was the right thing to do, was to talk to him and get involved with him, instead of just going, oh, wow, I ain't going there.
The thing about being a doer, though, you're blessed with more than one talent. You're a polymath. You can write, you can paint and draw, you can act. And
I don't think I do any of those things to any great level, and particularly writing, it's not something that I'm particularly keen on. I do it because I'm forced to do it. I'm not being humble. I am gifted in the sense that I have a degree of a gift for some of those things, but the degree of that gift is negligible.
Peter, you're gifted in many ways. You're a writer, you're an actor.
Yeah.
You wrote and starred in a Scottish road movie, Soft Top, Hard Shoulder. No work is coming in. What do? You sit down and you write something as a vehicle for yourself, or
And I originally wrote it to direct it, but then I never directed anything. So then I was just very lucky. I met some guys who they were giving.
How did that actually come about? You've got a screenplay, and you said, I've got a screenplay, and I'm playing the lead in it, and all I need now is to find finance, a producer, and a director. Is that?
I can't remember. I certainly wrote it because I was interested in the process of filmmaking, and because there wasn't much happening, I wasn't sort of getting the roles that I was interested in. But also, I just wanted to be part of this thing. It seemed to me very creative, this idea of making films and making comedies, and I just wanted to be part of all that. So I guess I just thought I'll write something that I can make, i.e. that it's of a scale that I can ask my pals to be in it. And it is, we don't have to build any big sets, so we'll just, because at that time I was driving up and down to Scotland. I thought, well, I know that journey very well. Let's just make a little story about that journey. So that's what I did. I can't remember how I met the boys. Stefan Schwartz directed it, who was great. How did I meet Stefan? He was an actor as well, and we were both cast in some short film, and we both compared notes.
Yeah, okay.
And he said he had a script, and I'll read your script, and you read my script. And it was at a time when there were quite a lot of deferred payment films, which means that you get a professional crew and professional actors, and they accept that they won't get their full fee. They negotiate a fee, but they won't get their full fee until the film goes into profit, because it's not coming from a studio, it's not coming from a large pool of equity. And there was a lot of films like that. It was a way for people. There's no Arts Council funding or film fund or anything, so it was a way for people to start sort of trying to make films.
Yeah. But it did go on to win the Audience Award at the London Film Festival.
It did well. It did, but it was for a film of its size and for its. I always think that they made a mistake. There's always the film business is odd because, well, show business generally is odd because it's full of, and I mean it in the nicest possible way, lies. They want you to believe something about something, and so therefore we'll maybe tell you some lies to get you to believe it, even if it's true. Yeah. So we'd made quite a good film, which was quite cheap, but unfortunately they decided not to tell people how cheap it was, because they feared that if they told them how cheap it was, they'd say it was impossible and you couldn't. Whereas if they'd said actually it was made for threepence, and this is what you got, it would have been quite impressive. But yes, no, it did very well.
I think you and I met around that time, 1995. You and I first met. We were both sentenced to. Cast in an Agatha Christie West End production called Murder is Easy.
Everyone's dream, isn't it? Everyone's dream to play an Agatha
Murder
Christie.
is Easy at the Duke of York's Theatre. You were the young, of course, the young, glamorous, romantic lead come detective, Luke Fitzwilliam, as I remember.
Yes.
And I was cast as Roger Ellsworthy, the gay art dealer. God only knows how they got the casting so disastrously wrong that they could have,
but this was an extraordinary kind of. This is
well, it was an extraordinary business. For me, it was only the second time I'd been on a stage. I think you, really? I think, had come off the back of a TV hit, and you were definitely above the title, as they say on the. And Charlotte Attenborough and Nigel Davenport were in it. A perfectly serviceable pot boiler, as I remember, on a revolving stage, which you always managed to walk the right way around, unlike myself, who tried to walk against it and looked like Michael Jackson moonwalking sometimes. But
no, but you were this. I mean, that's not what happened with this show. Was most of us reach a point where things don't always pan out the way you want. And you don't always do the things you want, but you've got to pretend when you're publicising them that they're the greatest thing, and this is what you always wanted to do. And really, that was at a time when I didn't have, things weren't going incredibly well.
You and me both.
If you're acting with Richard Strange, your career must be in trouble. But so
be nice to people when you're on the way out, because you might be seeing them on the way down.
But exactly. But he was a delight. Because I think I was quite depressed during this whole thing, because I thought, this is not what I wanted to do. With all due respect to the people involved with it, it was an attempt to cash in on the mousetrap. Or to cash in on the whole Poirot, Agatha Christie thing. In fact, it was written by the people who wrote Poirot, and it was. In fact, I think they'd intended it to be Poirot, but he pulled out at the last minute, so they got me.
I remember Agatha Christie's granddaughter came along to oversee rehearsals.
That was exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
So it was like it was like a sort of just a game of Cluedo, except it cost £85 a head to come and see it, and it was cast with a bunch of us, who were all sort of reasonably well known. And Richard played this decadent creature who moved into this little village, and he did the most decadent of things, like paint, and he wore a velvet throw over his shoulder, and he used to I couldn't do a scene with him. I mean, we had one scene together alone, and I dreaded it. Because I would go on and he'd have mascara on, or he'd have a big hat on, or he'd have a Stetson, or he would just do anything that he could to make me laugh, and succeeded, and actually sort of got me through it, because it was, that was enormous fun working
Well,
with
we did
him.
that for about 3 months, and then we had a great lucky break. We were told by the producers that the Saturday matinee was closed, was not going to be running, because that evening the Prime Minister, one John Major, was coming along to see the show, and they had to do a security sweep of the theatre. Do you remember this?
I don't remember.
I'm not imagining it. Stick with this story, Peter, because it's true. The matinee was cancelled. The show was supposed to go up at about 7:45. It got to 8 o'clock, nothing. 8:10, we got a message from the front of house saying a member of the audience had died in the foyer, and they were trying to hide the body because John and Norma Major were just arriving at the same time. And they were putting a blanket. Oh, I'm surprised. Maybe this happens wherever you work, but trust me.
I don't remember any of it.
A serving Prime Minister was arriving. They had to, it's worthy of Agatha Christie.
Yes.
They had to cover some poor old dear from Godalming who'd just come up for a good night out.
Yes. So who did it?
Well, the jury is still out. John and Norma came in, and you know we always like to have a drink at the end of the show, and it's a Saturday night. We're going up at 8:15 instead of 7:45, so already drinking time at the end of the day is cut by half an hour. And so we do the show at double time, and just as we're about to fly out the theatre, we get a call from the stage saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, would you come down to the stage? The Prime Minister would like to address you." So we all went down. I can't believe you don't remember this, honestly. I'm not making it up, Peter. John and Norma were there, and he came around and shook us all by the hand and said, "Congratulations, we think it will run and run." And we thought we got 5 minutes, and then another announcement came. "Ladies and gentlemen of the cast, it's the producers here. We have bad news. The show closes next week due to poor ticket sales." I mean, so with this one visit by John Major, we'd lost the money for a matinee show. A poor, defenceless old woman had dropped dead, and the show, a perfectly good pot boiler, was killed in the cradle by the Prime Minister. Anyway, he didn't last much longer anyway. But you, at exactly that time, as we were going on the dole, you had this thing come out. A fabulous creation called Franz Kafka, It's a Wonderful Life, with
An honest tradesman.
Richard E. Grant and Ken Stott, of course.
Do you have anything that needs sharpening? Knives? Razors? Utensils?
Thank you very much, but not at the moment. Sorry.
Sir? They all come to me. From the butcher to the surgeon. And I'm conscientious.
I'm very sorry.
Sir, a moment. I've lost my little friend, sir. I had him with me when I came in, and now he's gone. He's probably just asleep somewhere on a bit of bread. Or in a moist ear. But you see, sir, I think he might be in your room. He'd like you.
There's no one in here except me, honestly.
But he's very small. You wouldn't notice him. If I could just take a look.
Believe me, I'm completely alone. So, perhaps another time? Sorry. There's this man who wakes up one morning and turns into a That is it. Let's stop the noise right now. I can't work because of this rabble, so that's it. The party's over.
I'm so sorry, how thoughtless. I'll stop it at once.
Fine.
Oh, is this a real conversation or an imaginary one?
Imaginary, of course.
Thank goodness, it's a wonderful party.
Franz Kafka, It's a Wonderful Life. A brilliant, brilliant piece of work. Great cast. You wrote it and directed it?
Yeah, yeah.
And did it win anything?
It won an Oscar for Best Short.
It won an Oscar for Best Short. Hot off the stage, working with me, your luck changed, didn't
That's
it?
right.
The Prime Minister had come and seen you and said, well, you don't remember, but what was it like winning an Oscar? How brilliant is that? It got the best short live animation, live action.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, because the reason I made the film was because I hadn't directed anything and I didn't get to direct the film that I'd written before. So I thought, well, this time I want to be in charge of how it looks and the whole thing, blah, blah. My little shoebox again, and so I managed to get the money together, and Richard Grant very, very kindly came and was wonderful, and all the actors. That was my wife, Elaine, there, who was there playing that role. The Oscar was wonderful and utterly confusing because I didn't know you had Oscars for shorts, and I'd got some money from the Scottish Scottish Film Fund, and they had put it in for the Oscars. So I didn't know anything about it, and so it was just on Oscar nomination day. I had all I was staying with someone, I went home and they had 28 messages on their machine looking for me, and they said, you've been nominated for an Oscar. I can't figure out, what is this all about? I can't figure it all out. And then it all came out, they put this in, it'd been nominated, and but again, it's kind of I think it's something about me. I never kind of get the whole thing. Do you know what I mean? We made this little film, but we had no money. So we had no money to go to the Oscars. So we then had to start begging and borrowing and asking people and blah, blah, and trying to get sponsorship. And eventually we pulled enough money together to go to the Oscars. And we're gauche. I mean, totally gauche. We get all these phone calls at the hotel. I was staying at the Chateau Marmont, which was absolutely gorgeous. Hi there, how's the winner? How's the winner? This is before the prize has been given. I might see you tomorrow. You say, why don't you come having a party afterwards? Come to the Vanity Fair party. This is Bob Weinstein here. And I'm going, I'm not sure what we're going to be doing after. We might just go for a hamburger or something like that. Thanks very much. Anyway, not knowing who people were. And also because I wasn't a director, I was an actor. So I didn't have an agent that looked after me for directing and all this stuff. So I sort of went there on my own. And then they called my name and it was amazing. And it was like orgasmic. It was absolutely, this incredible feeling. And I stood on the stage and looked down, and it was sort of acidy, because I was saying, that bloke looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that bloke looks like Steve Martin. Oh, it is Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it is Steve Martin. And they give you this Oscar, and it's fun. You can't believe what's happening. It's amazing. And then they take you backstage, and this is where, be suspicious, George Wiley, comes into play. They take you backstage, and there's a lady with an enormous dress and a clipboard who puts you on a conveyor belt. And you'll see these photographs of, Daniel, I'm sure in February will be standing holding up his Oscar, and these photographs are taken in a room that's like a hangar, full of the world's press. So that lady guides you from the stage, checks your name, and then takes you to the hangar, which is enormous, and there's a little mini stage at the end of it where all the photographers are, and Daniel goes up there and holds up his Oscar, and they take lots of photographs of it, and the world's press asks Daniel questions. The woman said to me, you come in here, you get it for us dinner, and they all talk to you. And I said, they're not going to talk to me. They won't want to speak to me. And she said, no, you've got to do this, you've got to come on stage. I said, they will not want to have a word with me. No one will want to have a word with me. I'm sorry, you got to go up this year. So she gets me up on the stage. Hi, I'm Peter Capaldi. I just won Best Live Action Short. Any questions? Tumbleweeds. Not even the Glasgow Herald was there. Nothing. But still I had an Oscar. And then when we went home, we couldn't afford, you know, we were traveling economy. But I thought, if I've got an Oscar, maybe they'll... So I went to the BA desk at LAX and popped that on like that and said, yes, we're going home. And we're taking this with us. And they at least had the decency to look embarrassed. But they said, I'm sorry, we don't have any, we can't upgrade you. There's no, all right, okay, well, that's fine, I've still got an Oscar. So we went into the economy, and we, you know, rather like, it was like a sort of Marx Brothers film. Because everybody in economy took the Oscar. It was all handed round, and everybody got a hold of it and stuff like that. And it was like that scene in, you know, Night at the Opera when they go underneath, and all the Irish people, all the Italian people, I got the Oscar, I got the Oscar, let me see the Oscar, let me see the Oscar. He's a good guy, he's a good guy. And the BA sent back a couple of bottles of champagne, which was sweet.
Oh, that's nice. They didn't charge you excess baggage there.
No.
Obviously
but
not
that's
right.
kind of what it was like.
Yeah.
You get these fabulous waves of success, and then I'd sort of not know quite what to do.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have a whole kind of, you know, career planned out where I would suddenly hang around and talk to all these agents and stuff like that and get stuff going. I sort of didn't know how to capitalize on this.
Yeah. You know what? That's what we call endearing. I'm going to have to fast forward now because the light's coming up outside and it's 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
and we've only got to 1995, so I'm going to have to fast forward to 2005, which is another game changer for you, and in a way, probably why a lot of our audience is here tonight, from a different generation to yourself and myself. You got this gift of a part in the thick of it, Malcolm Tucker.
Yeah.
But I think the mark of a great actor, and again, no desire to embarrass you, I think the mark of a great actor is when an actor creates a part that you cannot imagine any other actor doing and bringing to life the way you did. And I just think, this is from In the Loop, I know, but this is the character Malcolm Tucker from The Thick of It and In the Loop.
Malcolm, monitoring all the usual. How'd your team do at the weekend? All right, yeah, we won. Sam, morning. How are you? Well, pop pickers. What dish shall we start with today? Monkey Ron, or how about Simon Foster on the Eddie Mayer PM programme on BBC?
Well, I'm joined by Simon Foster, the Minister for International Development.
Here
Thanks
we
for
go.
joining us. You've been in the job now for
very
18 months. Do you think you're making headway?
Yes, I do. You'd expect me to say that, I suppose. Preventable sickness in many of the poorest countries around the world. And of course, the big one is diarrhea, which is a major issue.
Diarrhea. This is the Minister for International Development. Should be talking about food parcels, not fucking arse-spraying mayhem.
And so if we can tackle the easy things like diarrhea, then we can...
Oh, say it again. Yes, very good. What is this, the shitting forecast?
Strike another blow in the war against preventable diseases.
You mentioned the word war.
Steady,
I just
against
wonder...
preventable diseases.
Yes, all the evidence now points to a US military intervention in the Middle East. Is that your view?
Well, personally, I think that war is unforeseeable.
Sam!
Unforeseeable?
Yes.
No, you do not think that! Sam!
I'm
I'm going to have to go to international development and pull Simon Foster's fucking hair. He did not say unforeseeable. You may have heard him say that, but he did not say that, and that is a fact. Okay, go ahead and print unforeseeable. Listen, see when I tell your wife about you and Angelina at the Blackpool conference, what would be best? An email, a phone call, or what? Hey, I could write it on a cake with those little silver balls. Your hack husband betrayed you on October the 4th, and congratulations on the new baby. Yeah, maybe it's better to spike it. Yeah, okay, fuckity bye.
Yes, of course, it's in the fridge. It's got cling film on it and everything.
Because the James Lewis Big Clean program.
That's the point of cling film.
No, I don't want to hold.
Yes,
No, he's had
but
that
it might dry out. That's an amateur mistake you're making.
I'm not holding any longer, right? Okay, what's he waiting for? A fucking sex
It's not
change?
carcinogenic. Cling film doesn't give you cancer.
What, Simon Foster?
What kind of country do you think this is?
Yeah.
Cling film doesn't give you
Diary of a nobody, yeah.
You know,
Listen,
aluminium foil
okay,
gives you AIDS, or you know, lasagna gives you syphilis. That's not a thing.
Oh, you relax! Get me fucking Brian! If you don't get me fucking Brian, I'm going to come over there, I'm going to lock you in a fucking flotation tank and pump it full of
sewage. What was the audition process for that like?
Again, it was one of my careers with lots of ups and downs, and I was going through a rather flat period. And I remember I was very fed up with the whole thing, and they said, Armando Iannucci, who we later discovered had been much, that our parents had known each other, and well, I'll have to get into that later. They said he'd like to see you for this political thing. And I'm quite jaded by this time. What political thing? It's something about, he likes Yes Minister, so he's thinking of doing a modern version of Yes Minister. Really? Okay. All right. So when does he want to see me? Tuesday at 2 o'clock, I think. All right, fine. What does he want me? Are they going to send me the script? There is no script. Right, okay. So there's no. So what does he want me to do? Improvise. Improvise. Okay. Now my memory of improvising is someone's just down from Oxford. And they've got a gig, they're going to direct a play above, the Finborough Arms or something like that, and they just get a group of actors together and get them to make up stuff, and then they cobble it all together and make a play, and they get an Olivier Award, and the actors are forgotten. So I said, improvise, all right, okay. And what else is happening on Tuesday? You've got to go for this audition for this other thing earlier in the morning. So I got this audition before the thick of it, for this thing. It was also a political thing, and I thought, oh, that sounds good. It's for one episode. The character might come back. But maybe not. Oh, okay, fine. And what is it? And they told me, and have they got a script? Yeah, and they sent me the script. It was 2 scenes in this thing, and I went along, and I read these. I could do these scenes standing on my head, But I went in, and things had changed so much in the business that it used to be you go for an audition, and by the time you got home, your agent would have phoned and said, you've got it, or you haven't got it. But by then, the whole strata of executives and everything had changed within the business, within the BBC, so you never heard anything for months. But I went to this audition in the morning for this other thing. I'd worked with everybody in the room, except for one person. I'd worked with everybody else, and I didn't get the part. And I thought, this is because somebody else has decided, I don't want, he's not right for this, or he's not, whereas everybody else. And I thought, I can't even get this little part. So I was really hacked off by the time I walked in to meet Amanda. So I was really like, Amanda, who I love, and I think is fabulous, and is genuinely a comedy genius. I was like, comedy genius? Let's see it. Let's go with the comedy, okay, sort of. So he started saying to me, yeah, we're doing this thing, and blah, 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 yeah. So what you want to, I'd like you just, I said, is there a script note? I'd like to improvise. Okay, what do you want to do? I want you to sack me. I'm an MP, and you've got to sack me. I said, what, you want to just make it up? Yeah. I just make it all up. He said, yeah. What, I don't have, well, you don't have any lines for me or anything? He said, no. Oh, okay, all right. So then I had to launch into this whole sort of thing of sacking him. And then he started saying, but can I come back? And I can remember I said to him, no, you can't come back. I said, it's not fucking Coronation Street. It's Downing Street. You can't fucking come back. That's it, you're out. And then he said, well, I'm going to complain. I said, do what you like. Do what you fucking like, I don't care. And that was the moment when I felt the character, I don't want to be wanky about it, but I just, in that moment when I said, do what you like, I knew that was how, I knew who this kind of character sort of was. Yeah. Because he was just powerful and he didn't give a shit. And I got the part. But they didn't have a script, and it went on for, and I thought, when am I going to get a script? When am I going to get a script? Well, you never got a script until about 2 days before you started shooting.
Adam Tandy, the producer, said when Peter came to the casting session, he'd already been for an audition that day. I don't think he'd been working an awful lot, and he was in slightly off-colour mood. We did an improvisation session, and he channeled all his frustration into it. That could be what got him the part. He was born to play the role. I mean, so much loved, not only by, you know, us mere consumers, but by the people that you're lampooning, by the people that you're modelling it on. By all accounts, George Osborne was, when he was rumbled as a fare dodger, was actually watching the thick of it in first class on his laptop, yeah. Ed Miliband described George Osborne's latest budget as an omni-shambles, which was a word that, you know, had never been heard before you...
It was created by Tony Roach, who's one of the writers. That was,
yeah, a word that had never been used before.
It never been. It was invented by Tony.
Yeah.
Tony's written some of the best lines in the thick of it. Come the fuck in and fuck the fuck off. That's one of Tony's. And one of the best, I think Tony wrote also Tucker's Law, which was never in the program. They cut it. But I loved it so much. I kept saying to people, you must put this back in the program. And it never made it into the program. But it was that Tucker had a law, which was if some cunt can fuck something up, that cunt will pick the worst possible time to fuck it up because that cunt's a cunt. I've got that printed on a tea towel at home. And it was that. So now people have made tea towels with that on it. And that
there's a certain amount of discussion out in the real world as to whether it's that character is modelled on Alistair Campbell or Harvey Weinstein. Is it?
I think it's... I was certainly more familiar with the Weinsteins than I was with Alistair Campbell. So really when we started, there wasn't a great discussion about it. It was just... You know, it was a spin doctor. Obviously, Alistair Campbell was mentioned. Peter Mandelson was mentioned. But I'd never really... The only people I had heard swearing and attacking people and using that level of vitriol and dynamism were Americans.
Yeah.
And they were American agents, and American producers, and they were able to fry people, to absolutely desiccate them. And then come in the next day, how are you? All right, good, saw you last night. Terrific to see you. You're looking great. How's your kid? You know. And when I thought, well, that's how it should be. It should have that velocity and attack.
Clearly, you won armfuls of BAFTAs and the British Comedy Award for the thick of it, and it must have changed your life. How was it suddenly being, in the way that only an absurdly successful British TV show can change an actor's life that much? A film doesn't really, does it?
Yeah.
But British TV is such that you are, by definition, in every home, and so everyone on the street knows you.
Yeah.
How was that for you? Because
lovely. Lovely.
Lovely, was it? Yeah.
Absolutely lovely. And also because everybody who... you know, it's every day people stop me in the street and say, can I have my photograph taken with you? And they all want me to, I've got to shout at them. And I've got to look angry. And it's great because what eventually I sussed it out. I say, fuck off and get a life. Don't run around asking for people's fucking autographs. Just fuck off and get a life. I'm just an ordinary human being. Leave me the fuck alone. So they like all that, and they're all smart, clever people, and it's absolutely lovely. I remember one day I was filming something in Manchester. I was doing The Accused, which is Jimmy McGovern's, which is great, but it's quite depressing to make because I was playing somebody whose son had died, and the whole thing. You know, you think, oh, this will be a stretch for me as an actor. It'll be good. It's a grieving father. But at the end of day 2, you're like, oh, I don't have to do this for another 2 weeks to do it. And I came out of the hotel one night looking for a supermarket where I could buy a bottle of wine or something at a cheaper rate than the hotel was offering.
You're Scottish, aren't you?
Of course. To the end. And suddenly Spamalot was playing, and it just finished, and all the audience of Spamalot came out and spilled all over me, and they were all young. And they all knew Malcolm Tucker, and they all gathered around. It was like a kind of, it was like a benevolent version of that scene in The Night of the Locusts, where all the fans eat, you know, the film star. Everybody was absolutely loving it. It was just delightful, and so that's it's great. People are kind and smart, and they like it. And I'm very lucky.
You're enjoying it?
Very much.
Good. Going to have one more look at Tucker, if we may, in the loop with James Gandolfini from The Sopranos, of course.
Fluid here. I'm a fucking husk.
Jeez. Got everything you need?
Yeah, thanks. Oh, whoa. General Flintstone. Was it you? Did you leak Whip Whip? I mean, I know you can't fire a gun, but can you use a fax?
No, I didn't leak Whip Whip. I do everything up front, okay? Not like some creepy little gay mercenary that sneaks around doing other people's dirty work.
Hey, I am doing my own work. I'm doing my job.
No, you're doing Linton's dirty work. You're his little English bitch and you don't even know it. But if I went into your hotel room tonight, I'd see on all fours little fishnets on, him hanging out of the back of you.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. That's tough talk coming from a fucking armchair general. Why don't you put your feet up on a poof and go back to sleep, why don't you?
You know, Tucker, you might be a scary little poodle fucker back there in London, but here you're nothing. You know what you look like? Squeezed dick. Got a little blue vein running up the side of your head. See, that's where I put the bullet. But I'd have to stand back because you look like you'd be a squirter.
Have you ever even actually killed anybody? I mean, really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, falling asleep on someone, that doesn't count.
Oh, that's good. That's good. How about you, Pussy Drip? Ever kill anybody?
Maiming is what I prefer. Psychologically.
Why don't you try to maim me? I'll hit you so hard in the face you'll be shitting teeth.
Go right ahead. I can see the headlines right now. Peace-loving general starts fight at the UN, Swiss intervene. I don't know. I'm not an expert on spin. But that could hurt your career.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do excuse me. I've got work to do. Don't ever call me fucking English again.
How is it working with someone like him? I mean, how is it for him working with someone like you? But
it's great. I mean, I was a huge fan of The Sopranos. So when they said James Gandolfini was in it, I was so thrilled. And but then when he arrives in the flesh, it's extraordinary. We rehearsed in New York because the technique that Armando uses is he writes a script which is very, very, he writes a great script which we then improvise around, and then they continue rewriting it. It's a constant process of writing, improvisation, writing, rewriting, blah, blah. So James, we went to rehearse in New York, and he walked in, and it was him. It was Tony Soprano, and he was big. He was like this, and he spoke like this, and he was, and I thought, this is amazing, but I thought, I can't let this, I've got to be Malcolm. I can't let my fanboy thing take over. I've got to just say, look at this fat fuck here. And the first day, we sort of did the kind of ancestor of that scene, which I can't remember what the lines were, but then we just started going, you fucking big fat, you don't fucking call me this, don't fucking do this to you. I would like to see you try that. Come and give me a blah, 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 blah. And it got more and more heated and heated and heated until finally he went, like this, and his paw was about this size. And I stopped improvising. I said, that's lovely, Armando, isn't it? Shall we stop there? Let's just leave it. Well done, Jim. He was immensely, I found him immensely gracious.
Yeah.
I thought he
was he happy to work in that way, in an improvisational way?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was quite scared. But, you know, Armando's a very, the great thing Armando has is that we trust him. Yeah. So, you know, one of the things about being funny is you have to be prepared to be not funny. Yeah. You have to be prepared to be, you know, stupid and have a go at being funny and do a line that's not good and do all this on film. I mean, that's what happens with us when we do the thick of it. A lot of the time we're really not funny, but then we'll hit a scene and luckily the cameras are there. So you're in quite an exposed position. So James was very open for that. But I love, I must just very, very, very quickly say, James is very gracious, and he was a great example of what happens to someone who becomes very, very famous. In New York, obviously, anywhere James goes, he's recognized, and a group of people come and ask him for autographs and to have their photographs taken, and he's always, you know, he stands there and he says yes, yes, and he does it the way you should do it, with great grace and gratitude, and he moves on. But we went to, at the end of shoot party, or the end of shoot evening, the producers, as they often do, said, we'll rent a restaurant and we'll get a couple of tables and we'll get everybody around the table and that'll be fun. And we went to the restaurant, and the restaurant was on 2 levels, and on one level the producers put us, the actors, and all the producers and all the executive producers. And on the other level, which was upstairs, they put all the makeup people and costume people and wardrobe people, which isn't fair really, because those are the people that we work with every day. So we wanted them to be in the party and not just sit with the producers, much as they were all lovely. We wanted our people to be down here. But the restaurant was full. And I thought, how are we going to get these, maybe if we could get this next table cleared, would be all right, but how are we going to do that? Because there's people there eating their dinner. And I thought, James is coming, isn't he? James hasn't arrived yet. So when James showed up, I said, James, we got this problem. Do you think you could have a word? And he just went over and had a chat with his, would you mind tell me, you know, I got our friends upstairs. And he said, yes, as long as we have a photograph taken with you. And that's what he did. He had his photograph taken with him, and they vacated their table and let our people in.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
Which was very sweet.
I'd like to say thank you so much to Peter Capaldi, who has graciously, as a coda to this lovely talk, agreed to do something that he hasn't done for 30 years, which is not ride a bicycle, but he's going to sing a song with me. And to make sure the whole thing doesn't go totally tits up, we're going to have a real singer come and join us on stage as well. Would you please give a big hand to Sarah Jane Morris, please? We were like a band last night. We were sort of saying, well, what song do you want to do? And none of us could agree, and we almost broke up the band before we'd even formed it. So it was very much a sort of 1975 Glasgow punk vibe last night. But we did come to some agreement. Peter, of course, wanted a 72-piece orchestra and a piano player here to sing Lady Stardust. But no, we came to an agreement, we negotiated, and we're going to do a song by Loopy Lou Reed, which I hope you'll enjoy.
Sometimes I feel so happy, sometimes I feel so sad. Sometimes I feel so happy, mainly you just make me mad. Baby, you just make me mad. Linger on, your pale blue eyes. Linger on, your pale blue eyes.
Thought of you as my mountaintop. I thought of you as my peak. Thought of you as everything I've had but couldn't keep. I've had but couldn't keep. Linger on, linger on. Your pale blue eyes.
If I could make the world as pure, as strange as what we see, well, I'd put you in a mirror just in front of me. I'd put you just in front of me. Linger on your pale blue eyes. Linger on your pale blue eyes.
Skip a life completely. Stuff it in a cup. She said money is like cousin time. It lies but can't stand up. Down for you is up.
Linger on your pale blue eyes. Linger on your pale blue eyes. It was good what we did yesterday. I'd do it once again. The fact that you are married, it only proves to me that you're my best friend.
It's truly, truly a sin.
Linger on your pale blue eyes. Linger on your pale blue eyes. Linger on your pale blue eyes. Linger on your pale blue eyes.
Sarah J. Morris. And I'd like to say thank you so much to Peter Capaldi for coming to A Mighty Big If tonight. We're going to vacate the stage now for a couple of songs that Sarah Jane is going to sing with accompanist Antonio Foccione.
This first song is about something that I was drawn to the attention of many years ago. It was a very crazy, sick man in Ipswich that went around murdering prostitutes. So it stayed with me, it haunted me, and I decided to try and write a song from the perspective of the prostitute. Lonely shapes in sodium light, Cars for cars that stroll the night, in the shadow of the full-blown ground, and then the circle going round and round, an endless circle going round and round, in the shadow of the full-blown ground. Cars for cars that stroll the night, lonely shapes in sodium light. I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone, so pay on up and drive me home. So I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone, so pay on up and drive me home. Round by the new industrial estate, lonely shapes, they shiver and wait to do the things they have to do, to buy a little wrap or two, to buy a little wrap or two, to do the things that they have to do. Lonely shapes, they shiver and wait round by the new industrial estate, but I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone, so pay on up and drive me home. So I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone, so pay on up and drive me home. Hey mister, I'm only in it for the crack. I like things much better when you were lying on your back. 'Cause see, it allows me to demonstrate and channel all of my hate. So you see, when I tie your wrists and ankles, I like to hear your pleas and thank yous. But when it's like this, when it's the other way around, and I lie here gagged and bowed, I'm living out of my comfort zone, so pay on up, drive me home. So I'm living out of my comfort zone, so pay on up, drive me home, drive me home. So I'm living out of my comfort zone, so pay on up, drive me home. So I'm living out of my comfort zone, pay on up, drive me home. You like the red lights, I like the green, and I like it in between the sheets, but now they are my downfall. Nobody nowhere hears my call. No, so I'm living out of my comfort zone, so pay on up, drive me home. So I'm living out of my comfort zone, pay on up, drive me home, drive me home, drive me home, drive me home, drive me home. And I don't like it this way, it's the other way round. I lie here gagged and bound, no. I'm just a little bit out of my comfort zone. Please, mister, please, mister, please, mister, please, mister, please, mister. Drive me home, drive me home, drive me home, drive me home, drive me home. I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone. I'm just a little bit out of my comfort zone. Please, mister, drive me home, take me home, please, mister, please, mister, please, mister, take me home, take me home, take me home, take me home, please, take me home. Thank you. Okay, this next song is about it's about a friend of mine who's a little bit dangerous to herself. As long as I've known her, she has fallen in love with anybody in a room, usually people she never gets to speak to. She has an imaginary relationship with them, and they're gone. It's called Awestruck. Well, I chanced to glance in another direction. When I turned around, he was gone. Black cashmere draped around his shoulder. Oh, you know, it really turned me on. It was the way that he lit a cigarette. He shook the match to quell the flame. And oh my God, the way he smiled. And I swear I heard him call my name. But the plastic mobile phones were ringing. Dirty white vans, they keep passing. Thunder rolling, lightning flashing. And then there's a shaft of sunlight and it frames him. And I tell you, I'm just, well, I'm awestruck. It's the way that he arched his eyebrows, and the way he tilted back his head. Oh, and the way that he drunk his absence, and all the words he never said. Oh, it's the way he tied his hair back. Oh, the way that he wrote down notes. No, the way that his crucifix was gently resting there on his throat. The plastic mobile phones are ringing. Dirty white vans, they keep passing. Thunder rolling, lightning flashing, and there's a shaft of sunlight and it frames him. And I tell you, well, I'm just, I'm awestruck. Gonna miss him when I'm gone. I'm gonna miss him when he's gone. I'm gonna miss him when I'm gone. I'm gonna miss him when he's gone. He's toying with my fantasies. He's seducing me with all those possibilities. He's toying with my fantasies. But there I go again, there I go again. I'm going down, 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 down. He's toying with my sensibility. Oh, he's gambling with my sanity. Seducing me with all those possibilities. There I go again, there I go again. His plastic mobile phones are ringing. Dirty white vans, they keep passing. Thunder rolling, lightning flashing. There's a shaft of sunlight and it frames him. And I tell you, well, I'm just awestruck. Awestruck. Antonio Forcioni.